Hi and welcome to the Cloaked Hedgehog's YouTube channel and episode 2 of our Dogman Werewolf crash course. Today we're going to talk a little bit about history, but this is in no way a complete account of everything that has anything to do with werewolves throughout history. Instead, it's a broad look at things and people and phenomena from the past that may possibly have something to do with the sightings of today. And we're going to start with the first known kind of werewolf, King Lycaon. In Greek mythology, King Lycaon was a ruler of Arcadia, and whether he was just a mythological figure or if he actually existed at some point, we don't know. But if he did exist, it was in the time before the Great Flood. Lycaon was a pretty nasty fellow. He was greedy and self-absorbed and power-hungry, and he committed really gruesome acts. Despite this, he's also remembered as a culture hero because he founded a city called Lycosura. He established a cult of Zeus Lycaeus, and he started the tradition of the Lycaean Games. The reason Lycaon is considered the first werewolf is because he had Zeus over for dinner, and Lycaon wanted to test Zeus and see if he really was omniscient, if he knew everything. So he killed one of his sons and then roasted his flesh and served it to Zeus. Zeus, of course, being omniscient, realized what Lycaon had done, and he was pretty grumpy. And he punished Lycaon and his offspring and transformed them into wolves. Sometime before the year 500 BC, there was a tribe called the Nuri, who were living along the southern Bug River, which is roughly in the area of northern Ukraine and southern Belarus. Herodotus, who got around, it seems, is always involved and talking about people from the past, and he described the Nuri people as such. It seems that these people are conjurers, for both the Scythians and the Greeks who dwell in Scythia say that every Nurian once a year becomes a wolf for a few days, at the end of which he is restored to his proper shape. Once upon a time, not so long ago, Tommy used to work on the docks, never mind that, they were once believed that people with the head of a dog were living in various parts of the world. They were called cynocephali, and which means dog head. They were supposed to live in several areas of the world, actually. For example, Marco Polo, he visited the Orient, and he claimed to have witnessed dog-headed people. He said they lived on an island he called Andamanine, and people have been theorizing if this is the Andaman Islands, but nothing has been proven in any way. Either way, Marco Polo said that these people were growing spices and trading with the regular human people. He goes on to describe Andamanine as a very large island, and the people are without a king and are idolaters, and no better than wild beasts. And I assure you, all the men of this island of Andamanine have heads like dogs, and teeth and eyes likewise. In fact, in the face they are all just like big mastiff dogs. They have a quantity of spices, but they are a most cruel generation, and eat everybody that they can catch, if not of their own race. Science has of course deemed these anecdotes lies, even though on his deathbed Marco Polo was asked whether he had embellished his tales of the Orient to any extent, and the old man is said to have replied, "I haven't even told you half of what I saw." Before Marco Polo, we had Giovanni da Pian del Carpine, who was another European explorer, who was the first Westerner to enter the courts of Uday Khan of Mongolia, who was the third son of Genghis Khan. According to Giovanni, the armies of Uday Khan encountered a race of dogheads who lived north of Dalai Nor, which means Northern Ocean in their language and can possibly refer to Lake Baikal. Lots of strange stories about Lake Baikal, so why not dog-headed men? And even further back in time, around 400 BC, the Greek physician Ctesias wrote about dog-headed people in India. They speak no language, but bark like dogs, and in this manner make themselves understood by each other. Their teeth are larger than those of dogs, their nails like those of these animals, but longer and rounder. They inhabit the mountains as far as the river Indus. Their complexion is swarthy. They live on raw meat. They number about 120,000. The cynocephali living on the mountain do not practice any trade, but live by hunting. When they have killed an animal, they roast it in the sun. They also rear numbers of sheep and goats and asses, drinking the milk of the sheep and whey made from it. They cannot be defeated in war, since they inhabit lofty and inaccessible mountains. They do not live in houses, but in caves. They set out for the chase with bows and spears, and they are very swift on foot. They pursue and soon overtake their quarry. They are just and live longer than any man, 170, sometimes 200 years. Now, naturally, we're going to have to talk about ancient Egypt. You quite often hear people comparing Dogman to the ancient Egyptian god of Anubis. There could be something to this, comparing the modern sightings to the historical accounts. They could, but there could also be issues, and I'm going to address those a bit later. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about ancient Egypt, and this is from a blog post of mine, because I do a lot of research and I trust my information. So, this is not just about Anubis. There was an Egyptian god called Set, and today he's kind of associated with evil and chaos and mayhem, but that wasn't always the case. Set was the brother of Isis and Osiris, and also to Nephthys, which was his wife and sister. Yeah, he was the god of the desert and of storms and chaos and confusion, but he wasn't necessarily evil to begin with. Well, there was that incident with the chopping off his brother and usurping his throne, but other than that, Set was considered an equal of Horus the Elder, hero In the pyramid text, he was believed to be a friend of the dead, and he helped Osiris ascend to heaven. Interestingly, Set is thought to have had white skin and red hair, and thus red animals and red-haired people were believed to be his followers. All those ancient Egyptian gods had one or more animals representing them. Like Horus, for example, is represented by a falcon and has the falcon head. Anubis does not have a wolf's head, but a jackal head. Set's animal is a bit different. It's called a Shah, and it doesn't look like any animal known today. The Shah is usually depicted as a slender dog, kind of resembling a greyhound or a jackal. It's possible that this is an animal that no longer exists. The Shah has also been associated with an Egyptian cryptid called the Salawa. So Anubis, everyone knows about Anubis, even if they know nothing else about Egyptian history. They know about Anubis. And he was the son of Set, and he was a god of the afterlife and mummification. And he had the head of a jackal. Not a wolf, a jackal. But there was another ancient Egyptian deity that had a wolf's head. and he was called Wepwawet, which is ridiculous to try to pronounce. Way too many W's there, but Wepwawet was seen as a wolf deity, and he was referred to as the opener of ways, which sounds really, really interesting. Makes you wonder, what kind of ways? Portals? What? This Salawa cryptid in Egypt is supposed to resemble a large dog or wolf, as tall as 5 feet, has a large tail and striped fur and pointed ears which are also oversized. A local witness described it as bigger than a donkey but smaller than a camel, and with a long neck and tail. There's also this interesting connection between ancient Egypt and Mexico, and in a way Wisconsin. How weird. This is from a post I wrote called Anubis and Xolotl. In Wisconsin, about 50 miles west of Milwaukee, there is a park called Aztalan State Park. It contains flat-topped pyramidal mounds. The site was mysteriously abandoned around 1300 AD. It has been theorized that the complex was built by Aztecs. This is based, for example, on the name Aztalan itself, because according to the Aztecs, their legendary ancestral home was called Aztlan, which sounds a little bit like Aztalan. It's also mentioned in several texts that the Aztecs migrated south from the city of Aztlan to Mexico, where they came to settle and create their empire. The Aztecs had many gods. Most people have heard of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. But Quetzalcoatl had a twin that is less well known, and his name was Xolotl. The funny thing about Xolotl is there seems to be strange similarities between this Xolotl and with Anubis. They're both associated with the activities occurring between the death of a person and the arrival in the afterlife. They're not exactly lords of the underworld, but they have associations with the darker side of things. One of Xolotl's forms was a dog-headed man, and not just any dog, but the Mexican hairless dog. This Mexican hairless dog is sleek, but with a muscular chest, and when you look at it, you are kind of struck by its similarities with the jackal-headed Anubis. So what else do the Aztec and the Egyptians have in common? They both built mounds, mastabas, and pyramids. Wisconsin is also tied in with this, since pyramid structures have been found in Rock Lake in southeastern Wisconsin. Xolotl aided the dead on their journey to Mictlan, the underworld, whereas Anubis was the one who weighed the heart after a person died, is weighed against a feather, mat, which means truth. I'm just going to mention a little bit why there could be an issue with thinking that dogmen of today might have something to do with Anubis or Xolotl or anything else, because if we take the Egyptian gods, for example, Anubis was one, where the Sobeks, the crocodile men, were the descendants of Thoth, which would be the ibis stork men. If we go to other mythologies, we could ask why so few people report seeing harpies today, and where are all the sirens and the minotaurs, and not to mention the unicorns. The point is that if we consider some mythological beings, shouldn't we consider all? Now let's talk a little bit about my people, the Vikings, and their beliefs. Odin, our main god, our equivalent of Zeus in Greek mythology, was said to be a shapeshifter. He was ultra super mega wise and could do so many things, and shapeshifting was one of them. And it is said about him that he could take the form of anything, bird, fish, four-legged beast, and that in an instant he could appear in distant countries, even though his own body remained in a state of sleep and almost dead. This trait, or this knowledge, or this magic, or whatever this is, was then passed on and used by certain Vikings who came to be known as berserkers or ulvhedins. This magic, if it actually was something, and it seems to have been something, because so many people talked about it and it spread. I mean, the same thing is going on now in, for example, this with the skinwalkers. It's said to be pretty much the same type of whatever, something we've forgotten or something we can't explain scientifically and therefore deny. But I don't know if we should deny it just flat out. About Odin and his berserkers, it was said that his men rushed forward without armor, were as mad as dogs or wolves, and bit their shields and were strong as bears or wild bulls, and killed people at a blow. But neither fire nor iron told upon themselves. These were called berserkers. In Ireland, a long time ago, there used to be this group of werewolf warriors around Tipperary. And, I need to apologize in advance for this because I in no way speak Gaelic or have any idea how you pronounce Gaelic words. But these warriors were called Lycaon. And originally it was just one man who was capable of shapeshifting into a wolf at will. And later the name Lycaon came to refer to his offspring and possibly others who had this shapeshifting ability. And these werewolf warriors were so fearsome, and they were very sought after by kings who didn't mind paying the price. Sadly, the price they were asking wasn't gold or money or anything like that. What they wanted was the flesh of newborn babies. Ew. This kind of fits in with old legends about werewolves, because they were said in medieval times to be particularly fond of ripping fetuses out of a pregnant woman's body and such lovely things. And during the medieval times there were tons of witch trials and werewolf trials all over Europe. And people were a little bit high-strung in those days, and it didn't take much to be accused of either being a witch or a werewolf. And while I'm at it, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these medieval werewolf sightings from, for example, France. In 1693-94 in Benay, France, 200 to 250 victims were attacked by several beasts acting together. They looked like wolves, but they had a wider muzzle. They behaved in a remarkable fashion. They allowed themselves to be petted, but then leaping on the throat of the victim. They appreciated fresh meat and ate the weakest people. We have the Evelyn beast from 1677 to 1683. Over more than 5 years, terror reigned over the southwest of the Ile-de-France, just outside Versailles, the new capital completed under Louis XIV. Women and children were devoured by kinds of wolves, which ventured into towns. Almost 200 people were killed in dramatic circumstances, and many more were injured to varying degrees. In Lyon and that area around there was a beast between 1754 to 56 that attacked people, and something of the same rough description was seen in Dauphiné in 1763, and later in 1764 to 70 it popped up in the famous Gévaudan. And 113 people died and 49 were injured. 98 of the victims were partly eaten. But I need to say that most people cite La Bête du Gévaudan as a very famous werewolf story, but I don't think it was a werewolf. I really don't. It was something, some animal, but I mean the way it was described, it looked like a wolf, but it was the size of a calf. It had a large dog-like head with small straight ears, wide chest, large mouth, large teeth, and the fur was red but streaked with black on the back. Some say it had a striped tail, and others claim that it had very short legs and the belly was really close to the ground. And that doesn't sound like a Dogman. Does, however, sound like this Salawa cryptid in northern Africa, in Egypt, actually. I don't know. Maybe that's an actual cryptid, an undiscovered animal, but I don't think the beast of Gévaudan was a werewolf. I think it was something else. But that's just me. In Japan there were these dog gods called Inugami, and they are described as anthropomorphic dog-like beings, very similar to werewolves, and they are also said to be masters of black magic. So, okay, what have I not gone over now? Oh, tons, I'm sure, but this should at least give you some idea about werewolf-related things and people and phenomena in history, so you can understand that this is nothing new. What is new, in a way, is the word Dogman. These things have been described in very similar way for thousands of years. It's been around for so long, and even though the word Dogman is the most commonly used now, and even though I know there are several other researchers within this field who refuse to have anything to do with the concept of werewolves, I'm just not willing to close that door yet. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about theories and possible explanations. So be safe, and I'll see you next time.